Okay, so before we start, may we request Yvette to lead us the opening prayer.
In the name of the Father, of the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Amen. O Lord, we praise and glorify your name. We ask you for knowledge and understanding to see growth in all areas of our lives. We thank you for the gift of wisdom that enlightened us to think good and do good. This we ask through the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
In the Father, the Son,
Father,
and the Holy
Son,
Spirit.
and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, first and foremost, I would like to congratulate our academic scholars and even our dean's listers for a job well done during the second semester of the school year 2019-2020. I hope that you would continue and you would continue engaging yourself to all academic tasks or learning tasks, and that you would be able to sustain that academic status as you go through with your college life. Um, then I also would like to congratulate. We have four students, okay, who perfected the second quiz. Okay, congratulations for a perfect score in the quiz. The following are the students who perfected the quiz. We have Divine Rabara, Sebastian Jobert, Tulawan Ria, and yeah, there are only three. Four, we have Brenda Listing, okay, perfected the quiz. And of course, the following who got 24 over 25, a short of 1 point, De Ocampo Richard, Diciano Jovins. We also have Claire Mata, and we have Versosa Jan Isaiah. Okay, so congratulations. I'm really glad. At first, when I've seen the scores, there were those who failed the quiz, and I actually have asked myself whether I thought or I explained the lesson well, because when we had the discussion, there were many questions, and I tried to answer the questions. And when I asked them if they were cleared about the answer, they said it was a very clear explanation, a very clear discussion. But unfortunately, there were still those who failed the exam. Then I asked myself, yun nga sabi ko, nakapagturo ba ako ng mabuti o hindi? Pero nung nakita ko na yung mga dumarating na mga scores ay pasado at matataas ng score, sabi ko, so maybe the problem is not in me. Okay, maybe the problem is with the internet connection, maybe, with the way they have answered the questions, maybe, or maybe they just didn't follow the instructions, or maybe they just failed to review their lessons. Okay, so thank you again for that good score, and that would only testify that indeed you are also helping yourself learn all our resources well, and study, okay, all the materials provided in the learning management system. Okay, I already have submitted your prelim examination questions. It's an 85 point exam. 85 points siya, pero merong dalawang question, multiple choice. Merong dalawang multiple choice question na 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 5 points each. Kasi masyadong mahaba yung tanong that you have to that you have that you have to study, okay, the situation, the classroom situation, before you could identify a good answer, okay, as a good answer based from the situation. Okay, for our last part of our discussion, okay, the three domains of learning will be part of the prelim examination. Okay, I know that you already have encountered these three domains of learning, and I think we have discussed it. Okay, we have discussed it. We have to have a surface discussion as regards it in our previous lectures or in our previous video conferences. Okay, so allow me to share the presentation. Okay, the presentation on the three domains of learning. Okay, so we will now proceed to the first part, the first topic under lesson 3, okay, on student learning outcomes. And in understanding student learning outcomes, in writing student learning outcomes, we have to fully understand the three domains of learning, developing learners' knowledge, skills, and attitudes. So the purpose why we have to understand these three domains of learning is for us as teachers to be able to develop activities or provide a significant student experience or learning experience for the development of our learners' faculties, which include their knowledge, their skills, and attitudes. And do not be confused. Some references would make use of attitudes as values. So instead of KSA, okay, we make use of KSV, knowledge, skills, attitudes, or knowledge, skills, and values. Okay? In Filipino, we term that as kaalaman, kakayahan, at kahalagahan, which would mean values. Okay? O kaugalian or attitudes. Okay? Three Ks in Filipino. Now, why is this topic important? Please take note that the domains of learning are a tool for understanding how people think, how people feel, and how people act. It's only through understanding these three domains, these three faculties of learning, that we could be able to fully understand also how our students think, how our students feel, how our students act as regards the learning content and the learning theories we discuss to them in our classes. By understanding the domains of learning, we can better plan what needs to be taught and how far we need to go through the material. So this would mean that using the three domains of learning, considering the three domains of learning when we plan our lesson, when we prepare learning activities and learning experiences for our students, then that would mean that we are actually ensuring, okay, the depth and breadth of learning. Nabanggit natin ito noong mga nakaraang talakayan. Yung sinabi natin na sa 21st century teaching and learning, our focus should be both the depth and breadth of learning, ang lalim at lawak ng pagkatuto. So that's how important the three domains of learning is. Ito kasi pinakamahalagang, pinakaunang gagawin natin, okay? Yung three domains of learning ang ating foremost consideration or primary consideration when we start planning the lesson for our students. Now, please take note that these domains of learning are developed, should I say, by Benjamin Bloom in 1956. So kaya wag kayong magulat kung nakakita ng Bloom's taxonomy of objectives, galing niya kay Benjamin Bloom in reference to the three domains of learning he proposed. Bloom's research describes the major areas of learning and thinking and classifies them into three large groups called the domains of learning. And what are these domains of learning? The first one, we have the cognitive domain. And when we say the cognitive domain, we're referring to thinking. We're referring to knowledge development. Okay? Cognitive is about thinking. It's about knowledge development. The second domain of learning is affective, which refers to the feeling. Okay? Feeling. Hence, the development of values. Okay? Development of values. The third one is the psychomotor domain or doing, and this focus on skills. So these are the three domains of learning proposed by Benjamin Bloom. The degree of sophistication increases as you extend deeper into the list, requiring greater depth, breadth for mastery of that level. So meaning to say, these three domains should not just be developed separately, but rather when we discuss theories, when we discuss concepts in our class, big ideas, okay, big themes in our class, then we have to consider that we are targeting these three domains equally. Okay? They could be able to master concepts, while at the same time, they know the value why they have to master the concept. and at the same time, they have that skill in transferring what they have learned to actual real life or actual or real life situations. That is the meaning of this statement. The domains of learning are used in instructional design. What for? To write goals, objectives, and outcomes for a curriculum. Later, we will be teaching you, or I will be teaching you, should I say, I'll be teaching you on how to write good learning outcomes or good learning objectives. And these objectives, these outcomes have to be based on the three domains of learning as proposed by Bloom. And later we will also learn other other way or other theories that would help us, that would guide us write good outcomes, good objectives for our students. This would mean that the domains of learning serve as a means for instructors to decide about depth and breadth issues when developing lesson plans and develop test questions. Look at how important these domains are. Even the taxonomy of objectives by Bloom or the domains of learning, okay, should always be a reference by teachers in developing test questions, in assessing student learning. Mamaya, titignan natin yung iba't ibang antas o level ng tatlong domain of learning. As Benjamin Bloom puts it, education must be increasingly concerned about the fullest development of all children and youth. And it will be the responsibility of the schools to seek learning conditions which will enable each individual to reach the highest level of learning possible. Bloom reminds us that this has to be our goal, that this has to be our ultimate purpose as teachers and as members of any educational institution, that is to allow our learners reach the highest level of learning possible. And reaching the highest level of learning possible would only be achieved if we consider developing these three domains of learning, these three faculties of learning as Bloom has proposed. Now, there are levels within the domains of learning. And as the student progresses from one level to the next within a given domain of learning, there's a deeper and fuller understanding. Meaning to say, as we move from one level to another level, it requires deeper and fuller understanding of the learning content, of the learning theory, of the big ideas or big themes we are teaching our students. And there are two strategies to classify these levels. Okay, so this one, the chart would show us the levels. Actually, there are only two levels. Yung low level, intermediate level could be taken as one level, and this is what we call as the lowest level. And level 3 or level 2 is the highest level. Okay, level 1 is called the knowledge level, that's low level. Level 2 is called the intermediate application level and called intermediate level. And level 3 is called problem solving level or high level. But in a succeeding presentation later, we will learn that there would only be two levels. The lowest levels, level 1 and 2, and the highest level, level 3. And we would see, okay, that the different levels under each domain is being distributed, are being classified under each level in this column, in the first column. For cognitive domain, we have knowledge and comprehension as part of level 1. Application as level 2, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation as level 3. For psychomotor domain, imitation and manipulation is under low level or knowledge level. Precision is under the intermediate level or application level, and we have articulation and naturalization under problem-solving level. For affective domain, we have receiving and responding under knowledge level, valuing under intermediate or application level, and articulation and naturalization under level 3 or problem-solving level. We will discuss later the meaning of each of these levels under each of these learning domains. Now, as I have said, there would only be two levels of the domain, the lower and the higher level. This is the vertical level. Okay, vertical kasi pataas siya, no? Level 1 to level 1 and 2. This is the vertical level. Level magkaiba si level of domains of learning, at magkaiba rin si level of the different domains of learning. So, the lower and higher levels, this strategy places the levels into two categories. As we have said, the first level or first two levels, that of the knowledge and application levels, this referred to as the lowest level. Levels beyond the lowest level, okay, are considered higher levels, the problem-solving level that we are referring to a while back. Sometimes, this strategy is confusing as there are no clear division points between high level and low level, resulting in greater of subjectivity. So dito papasok yung subjectivity ng teacher. And that subjectivity has to be used, okay, depending on the ability, dun sa intermediate level, nasa sa atin na yan as a teacher, kung paano siya may ka-classify, considering that there's really a thin line, a very thin line between the intermediate level and that of the low level, and even the intermediate level and that of the high level. Okay, saan na lang papasok yun? Yung sa ating pag-distinguish. As teachers, dun papasok yung ating subjectivity. And subjectivity would mean that our activities under the application level, the level or the degree of difficulty of the activities we do under intermediate level would already depend on the capacity or on the ability of our students. So kung ang estudyante natin, for example, ay masyadong magaling, maybe the application level, the activities under application level may fall under the lowest level. But if our students are those who are resource learners or resource students, the activities under application level may fall under the high level. Again, then papasok yung tawag nating subjectivity ng teacher in identifying the degree of difficulty of the activities we require of our students, whether the activities we require of them would be part of the lowest level or the highest or higher level. Okay? Now, as we have said, this is a three-level system, groups the levels of each domain into one of three categories: knowledge, application, and problem solving. Now we proceed to the knowledge or the first lowest level, because there are two levels under lowest level. The first lowest level is that of knowledge. What do we mean by this? That the knowledge level helps the students comprehend facts, procedures, and feelings. It includes simple skills or thought processes like, if our activities would require them to imitate, would require them to recall, would require them to define terms or concepts, and would require them to just merely receive and respond to new information, then these activities fall under the knowledge level. Okay? They fall under the knowledge level. Right? Now, how about for application, the second lowest level? For this part, it builds upon the foundation established in the knowledge level. Meaning to say, how will they make use of the concepts they have mastered in the knowledge level? It involves the integration and execution of principles, procedures, and values within specific situations. So it's about how you apply, how you use the concept or the theory you just have learned or you just have mastered under the knowledge level. It includes the following. If learning activities would require students, okay, to be precise, to be exact on the way they execute a certain skill, that is under application level. If the learning task is merely about applying the principle they have learned, that's under application level. And if it would require them value feelings and beliefs about the concept or about the theory, that's under application level. Okay? Next, under problem solving, this is the highest level or the third level. What is all about this? This builds upon the application level and indicates that mastery has been achieved. Involves the analysis of information, procedures, and feelings in order to modify and adapt a specific task depending upon situation. This is the difference between the problem-solving level and that of application level. The application level is merely applying what you have learned into a concrete situation. But for problem-solving level, it's about modifying what you have learned, okay, to fit in to situations, to fit into different situations. Halimbawa niyan, tinuruan akong gumawa ng basket gamit ang dahon ng niyog. So, nung nakagawa ako ng basket gamit ang dahon ng niyog, that is application level. Yung kaalaman ko, kung paano gawin paano gumawa ng basket gamit ang dahon ng niyog, at na-memorize ko kung paano yung procedure, yun yung knowledge level. Nung ginawa ko na mismo yung procedure na paggawa ng basket gamit ang dahon ng niyog, that is application level. But when I made use of the skills I learned about crafting a basket out of coconut leaves into creating a fruit tray or even a mat, okay, using coconut leaves, that's a new situation, dun papasok si problem-solving skill. When an individual is at the farthest part of this level, they are capable of metacognition. Kapag nakalayo na sila, okay, sa level ng problem solving, that would mean that the students have reached the highest capacity of learning, and that's metacognition. Thinking about thinking. Okay? That they can already learn even without directions, even without the guidance of anyone else, even without assistance from their teachers or any from experts. This is what we call the highest level of all learning, and this is termed as metacognition. Okay? So as stated previously, the language of the objective or outcome should clue teachers into the level of depth and breadth you should cover for the material. The taxonomy, later we will learn about the taxonomy, has information on verbs commonly used to describe objectives, outcomes for each domain of learning. So if you observe, in the three levels, we would see that application requires knowledge and that problem solving requires application. This would mean that if we really would like to teach our students that mastery, that content mastery, that learning mastery, then we have to develop, okay, these three levels to them or to our learners. Okay? So before we continue our discussion, may we have the question and answer portion. You might want to ask questions to clarify what you just have learned or what you just have heard from the first part of our discussion. Okay? Anyone would like to ask any question? There's a chat here. Sir, may papasok daw po, sabi ni Jovin. So, papasukin mo na, Jovin. Any other question? Chart, are you doing note-taking? Okay. Chart, you're doing note-taking? Okay. For those who are doing note-taking, that is a self-assessment strategy, because you're recording and you're writing the good concepts you're learning, and that would help you remember concepts you're discussing in class. Any question? Jovin, I think you have a question.
Sir, Ek1 na lang, sir.
Ano?
Yeah. So, parang assumption ko lang is that poor knowledge will result to poor application and poor problem solving, sir. Sir,
True.
but sir, there's parang merong mga students na mahina sa knowledge, sa cognitive, but sa application, sir, bumabawi, sir.
Yeah, yung mga ganong estudyante. Lalo sa mga highly demonstrative subjects. Alam mo, amin ko sa inyo, no? Mahina ako dun sa depende kasi sa dun sa field din ng bata. Ang kahinaan ko ay PE. You know, when I was in college, line of 9 naman yung grades ko sa PE when I was in college. Pero ewan ko kung bakit line of 9 ako, kasi ganito ginagawa ko noon. You know, I volunteered to my teachers to discuss the history of the different sports. Ma'am, I'll discuss the history of different sports. Tapos sabihin ng teacher, okay, you're accepted from the practical test. That time, the practical test is still not that practice in the university. Parang option ng teacher kung mag-practical test siya o hindi sa PE. Okay, kaya naman ako, sabi ko, ma'am, since I am a teacher, ganun naman ako noon, and I really would like to teach, ganun naman ako, I teach the subject. Okay, so kaya pag exam, sa PE no, meron pa kaming final exam, meron kaming prelim exam, midterm exam, final exam. Sa exam, matataas ang scores ko kasi alam ko, parang sa knowledge level, I know everything. Pero alam mo, pag maglalaro na, ganyan, natatakot talaga ako, lalo pag volleyball, ganyan, yung papunta ng bola sa akin, iniiwasan ko talaga kasi natatakot ako matamaan. And another thing is, yung pinakamahirap na hindi ko talaga kayang, at ang volleyball medyo natutunan ko ng konti Pero I really don't love playing sports kasi ang pinakamahirap na matutunan, yung sepak takraw. Hirap na hirap ako, itaas ang paa ko. Okay, sabi ko, bakit ko meron pang PE, ganun ako noon. Talagang sinusumpa ko ang PE noon. I really find it difficult. Maybe because I am not a highly physical person. Okay? Pero in high school naman ako, okay naman ako. I play basketball when I was in high school. Okay? I play sports when I was in high school. Pero nung college na ako, nawala yung interest ko. So I really hate that. Tapos meron pa. Ito ang example no na kapag wala ako sa PE talaga hindi ko na-reach yung highest level of learning sa PE. Okay? I know that. Okay? I am aware of that. Yung parang yung sa board games, yung board games, ganyan, kasi PE3 yan yung board games. Parang they taught us on how to play chess, how to play Game of Generals, and how to play the other games. Alam mo, minemorize ko lang yung PE namin. Okay, pero after PE, nakalimutan ko na kung paano laruin. So hindi ko na alam kung paano laruin ngayon. Because, yun yung patunay na parang hindi ko siguro nakita yung value, okay, kasi hindi ko na ginagawa, nakita ng value ng bagay sa akin. Okay, that's a good point from Jovins, no? That we really have to know, we really have to be aware of that. Na may mga estudyante na hanggang knowledge level lang. May mga estudyante naman na they even transcend dun sa level ng problem solving. Kasi kaya pa na rin i-apply mga bagay-bagay sa panibagong konteksto. Okay? Yun ang Kaya nga kaya nga sabi ko, maybe it's because of that I am not proud to say na sorry kung banggitin ko that I'm not proud to say na nag-graduate ako with an honor. Kasi kung titingnan, kung i-assess ko yung mga classmates ko, ang pinakamatalino sa amin talaga ay yung dina-awardan ng award ng academic distinction ng any award. Why? Because siya yung kilala kong PE major na classmate ko nasa Canada na siya ngayon. Ang galing-galing niya. Magaling naman siya sa content. Magaling sa klase. Ano pa siya? Dancer, CCA dancer pa siya. Dancer, kumakanta siya. Tapos magaling pa siya sa sports. Babae siya pero magaling pa siya sa basketball. Kahit alam mo sports, kaya niyang laruin. And at the same time, magaling pa siya sa theater. Nag-a-act pa siya kasi may mga theater pa ng St. Louis. Nag-a-act pa siya. Then, magaling pa siya magturo. Kasi classmate ko nga na PE major. Sabi ko, if there's someone who deserves the award, ganun ako nung graduation namin, it's you. Ako sa kanya kasi talagang alam niya lahat. And kaya nga sabi ko, at the end of the day, grades in the Philippines, in the Philippine educational setting, grades do not really measure how good the person is. Okay? Hindi talaga siya yung ultimate na sukat o yung pinakasukat ng katalinuhan ng tao, ng kakayahan ng tao. It's how we do things in life. It's how we perform things in life that matters more. That matters more. Okay? So, pero syempre, siguro kung kaya mo nang i-apply sa buhay mo lahat ng natutunan mo, at the same time, cum laude ka pa or summa cum laude ka pa, well, that's really worth of a high appreciation. Diba? Kasi nakaya mo lahat ng mga bagay na iyon. Pero tandaan natin na ang sukatan, ang tunay na sukatan ng katalinuhan o ng malalim na pag-unawa o malawak na pag-unawa ay hindi talaga yung grado na nakukuha natin, kundi yung kakayahan natin na ilapat ang mga ito sa pang-araw-araw na pamumuhay. Anumang klase ng sitwasyon ang kalalagyan natin. Okay, thank you, Jovins, for bringing that out. Okay? Any other question? Kape tayo, kape na ito, hindi na tutubig. Any question? None? Okay, so we continue our discussion. Now, these are the common verbs later. Anyway, I'll teach you later on how to write good learning outcomes. Okay, using these common verbs for each domain. So these are the common verbs. Okay, for each domain of learning. Under cognitive, we have define, describe, design, analyze, discuss, identify. These are just merely the common verbs. We are not discussing yet the other verbs that may fall under each of these domains. For psychomotor, we have demonstrate, show, perform, and conduct. Then for affective, we have defend, appreciate, value, and model. Okay? So ito yung common, just the common verbs for each domain. Later, we have a separate discussion as regards the other verbs that we could make use, okay, in identifying or crafting learning or writing learning outcomes for each domain of learning. Please take note that you cannot push students through the level. What does that mean? That they must be allowed to move from one level to level on their own or with your guidance. If you push them from one level to the next too quickly, they will not learn the material and will make mistakes. Remember what I have said before. As one of the principles or guiding principles of outcomes-based education. We said, sabi ni Stady, that okay, one of the principles is this, that all learners have the ability to learn, have the ability to understand things. Only that they have different pace. Magkakaiba tayo ng kailangan na panahon o kailangan na oras bago natin makamit yung pagkatuto. Siguro ako, sa PE, siguro kailangan ko talaga ng habang buhay na oras. Okay, nang sa ganun ay matutunan ko lahat ng mga sports. Okay? Nang sa ganun ay muli ko matutunan ang mga ito. Okay? So, kanya-kanya yan ng pacing. Kanya-kanya yan ng panahon kung kailan matutunan ng bata ang nasabing kakayahan. So as teachers, we should not force our students to move from one level to another if they're not ready to move to another level. If they can even master the knowledge, then we cannot proceed to the application level. If they cannot even if they cannot even apply, okay, or they cannot even do the application level, we should not move them. We should not force them to move to the problem solving level. We have to respect their pace. We have to respect the time that they need, okay, in order to master, okay, learning or master theories and concepts. Okay? Now, we proceed to the cognitive domain of learning. So the cognitive domain, as we have said, deals with didactic information. What do we mean by didactic information? When we say didactic, that would mean that didactic would mean that it is a designed or intended information that we teach them. Okay? Didactic would mean what do we intend to teach our learners. And the things that we intend, the information that we intend to teach our learners refer to the knowledge and facts. What knowledge, what facts are we to teach our students? And if these knowledge and these facts could be mastered by our students, then we are actually developing their cognitive domain. And the cognitive domain consists of 6 levels of sophistication from simplest to most complex. Ito yung tinatawag nating K Kaase. Okay? K Kaase. Okay? Very popular ito among EDUC students or among teachers. K Kaase. The K Kaase is the 6 levels, the 6 cognitive levels. From simplest to complex. Okay? Knowledge refers to memorization and recall. If I merely recall or I merely memorize concepts and I merely define concepts, that is knowledge level. Next is comprehension, interpretation, and understanding the meaning behind the information. If, for example, I can provide, if I can recite the definition, if I can recite the definition of globalization, okay, the definition of globalization based from what is being provided by books or by textbooks, then that is knowledge level. But if I can provide my own definition of globalization, then that's under comprehension. Okay? Now, we proceed to the next stage, next level, which is called application. Application is the application of classroom information to real-life situations and experiences. For example, okay, sabi natin sa knowledge, I can already recite the definition of globalization based from textbooks or books. That's knowledge. But I can already provide my own definition of globalization. That's comprehension. Now, kapag kaya ko nang i-apply yung concept ng globalization, halimbawa application ng concept ng globalization. Halimbawa, punta ako sa fast food chain. Okay? Ang gagawin ko ngayon ay yung mga iba't ibang characteristics ng globalization, titignan ko kung meron sa McDo. Remember that McDonald's is a global fast food chain. So kapag ma-check ko, kapag kaya kong gamitin yung checklist on how to check whether a certain a certain business is a globalized business, okay, then that is application. Nakikita ko na, na-apply ko na yung mga features ng globalization doon sa pag-unawa ko para malaman ko kung ang isang business firm ay ay resulta ng globalization. Okay? Kaya nga, di ba, in sociology, for social studies majors, in sociology, nabuo yung term na McDonaldization. Okay? And McDonaldization is the result of globalization. Kasi isa sa characteristics ng globalization ay yung mabilisang production. Mabilisang production ng goods and services. And McDonald's, as a fast food chain, okay, can produce foods that fast. Okay? Para hindi ka na magluto, punta ka na sa mga ganitong fast food chain, bibigyan nila kagad yung mga order mo and others. Okay? Kaya nagkaroon ng term na McDonaldization. Okay? That is application. Now, what do you mean by analysis? That is separation of the whole into parts in order to analyze their meaning and understand their importance. So suppose nagbigay si teacher ng isang issue. Okay, for example, education, contemporary education. Tapos i-analyze ko ang contemporary education, okay, using concepts of globalization, then that is analysis. I-breakdown ko kasi yung konsepto into several parts so that I could be able to understand the said issue on contemporary education. That is analysis. Now, when we say synthesis, combining of pieces of information into a new or different whole. Okay? For example, tinuro sa akin, for example, in one of my subjects in master's degree, halimbawa, tinuro sa amin ang migration as part of globalization. Migration, migration, lifelong learning, economic interdependence, violence and conflict, and others. So, tinuro yung mga konseptong ito. Ngayon, ang gagawin ko ngayon ay aaralin ko, i-explain ko kung paano naka-apekto ang mga issues na ito sa current educational practices. That is synthesis. So, ipapaliwanag ko ang edukasyon, ipapaliwanag ko ang kontemporaryo o makabagong edukasyon, sistemang pang-edukasyon, gamit yung mga issues na ito. Kumbaga, anong implication ni migration sa education? Anong implication what is the implication of conflict, violence, and war, okay, sa education, in the contemporary education? That is doing synthesis. Okay, that is doing synthesis. The last one is evaluation.
For you, I am Rina David.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks, ma'am. Wow. Sige, ma'am. Thank you. Oo. Sige, ma'am. Okay. So the next one, the last level under cognitive domain is what we call as evaluation. It's about making judgments and decisions about and with the information presented. Okay. It's about, evaluation is the highest level under cognitive domain. Why? Because it would require us to create our own judgment as regards to certain situations. Okay, for example, Na-synthesize ko about education na ito, the impact of migration to education, the impact of conflict, war, and violence to education, the impact of women empowerment to education, the impact of all this to education. That's synthesis. Ngayon, pag gagawa ko ng judgment ko, so how should education, what kind of education should we have now? Using all the implications of these things, of these issues, brought about by globalization, that is doing evaluation. Because I'm now creating a decision. I'm now making my own judgment of how education should be, of what kind of education should we have in the contemporary times or in the modern times. These are the different levels of cognitive domain. Okay? So before we continue, may we have the question and answer portion, okay, under cognitive domain. Any question? Okay, any question, class? Okay, any question? You might want to ask questions. Jobert, you might want to ask a question. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We only have 7 students in class already. Huwag na muna. Any question? None. Okay, so we now continue our discussion. If there are no questions, we now continue our discussion. So we now proceed to the psychomotor domain of learning. Okay, for the psychomotor domain, it deals with skills, actions, and manual manipulation. So anything about movement, anything about doing things, okay, is under this domain. It consists of 5 levels from basic to complex. First is imitation. It's about repeating the example given by instructor or role modeling. For example, I'll be teaching you how to do um, how to do a certain exercise. If I'll model how to do a certain exercise and you could imitate what I'll do, for example, an exercise for the chest, okay, then I'll show you how to do push-up, okay, to build muscle on the chest, and you imitate what I did, then that is imitation, merely under imitation level. Okay? But if you can already do, okay, what I did even without me modeling it to you, then that is under manipulation level. That's practicing and creating your own style already. Okay? Without any supervision, without any assistance from the teacher. Then you are already under the second level, and that is the manipulation level. If you can already perform the said skill without any mistake while you are doing it, that is on the third level, and that's what we call as that is what we call as precision, because you can already do it you can already do it perfectly. Okay, so ulitin ko, kapag nag-role model ako sa inyo kung paano mag-push up to develop muscle on the chest, and you are imitating me, that's the first level imitation. But if you can already do it without my supervision, that is manipulation. But if you could already do it without any mistake, that is precision. Okay, so these are the 3 levels. Now, the 4th level now is the articulation. Ano naman ito? you're proficient and competent, you have a proficient and competent performance of that skill with style or flair. So, kumbaga, nagagawa mo ng sarili mong pamamaraan, nalalagyan mo na ng sarili mong touch, nalalagyan mo ng sarili mong estilo kung paano gumawa o kung paano gumawa ng isang chest exercise. That is articulation. And the last stage is naturalization. Mastery level of skill performance without cognition, referred to as muscle memory or automatic. Kumbaga, hindi na kailangang ituro sa iyo, hindi na kailangang ipaalala sa iyo kasi naging natural na lang sa iyo na gawin yung mga bagay-bagay. That is naturalization. Okay, so these are the 1 to 5 levels, okay, of the psychomotor domain. Next, affective domain. It deals with attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, emotions, and how much value an individual places in something. It is considered the most difficult domain to evaluate. Yeah, this is very true. This is the most difficult domain to evaluate. When we are now to assess student learning outcomes, achievement student learning outcomes, the most difficult thing to evaluate, to assess, is the development of the affective domain of our students. It consists of 5 levels, from simple to complex. Receiving, for example, the first level. It's awareness of the value or importance of learning the information and willingness to learn. If, for example, I would ask you, what for is learning about the 3 domains of learning? And you can recite what I just have mentioned in the previous slide, then that is merely receiving. Okay? That is receiving. Nalaman mo na. When you say responding, okay, halimbawa, tinanong ko kayo, okay, do you think you have how do you respond with this passage about the importance of understanding the 3 domains of learning? And you responded, sir, I think it's also blah 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 blah. That is an example of responding the second level of affective domain. But if you could be able to provide another value of understanding the 3 domains of learning, then that is undervaluing already. Now, organization is about, nag-respond sila. For example, si Richard nagsabi ng isang kahalagahan ng pag-unawa ng nasabing paksang aralin. Nagsabi rin si Jovin, nagsabi rin si Jobert, nagsabi si Jamila, nagsabi si mga classmates nyo. Nagsabi si Michael and others. Okay? At pinagsama-sama ito ngayon ni Divine, yung mga sinabi nila, to come up with with a good reason why we have to study about the domains of learning, that is organization. And now, kapag ikaw ngayon ay ginagamit mo na lagi, okay, ang 3 domains of learning kapag nagpaplano ka ng lesson mo at hindi mo nakakalimutang magbigay ng learning outcome bawat domain, okay, that is already characterization. You are already into it because you already have realized the value of that. That is the last stage or the last level, characterization. Okay? Now, what are some classroom activities to target each domain? Ano yung mga activities na pwede natin ipagawa to target development of each domain? For cognitive, lecture, discussion, reading, diagramming, case studies, and drills. Yung drills usually sa math yan. Case studies usually sa science and math. Diagramming sa lahat ng subject, pwede reading sa lahat ng subject, discussion sa lahat ng subject, lecture sa lahat ng subject. What's the difference between lecture and discussion? Lecture, teacher lang magsasalita. Discussion, there's an exchange, there's a conversation inside the class. That's targeting these activities, target cognitive domain. Now, how about activities under psychomotor domain? Skills practice, scenarios, providing scenarios, simulations, role-playing. Simulations, for example, through video. Pakita sa video kung paano laruin ang volleyball. Okay, that's simulation. role-playing, and others. These are under psychomotor levels. Okay? Now, under affective, modeling behavior we expect the students to emulate. For example, tolerance, punctuality, respect, kindness, honesty, and integrity. Usually, the affective domain is developed with the hidden curriculum. What do you mean by hidden curriculum? Hidden curriculum would mean that it is not part of the written curriculum. It's not part of what has been written in the chat curriculum or even in the DepEd curriculum. But because of the behavior you are emulating, because of the behavior teachers are showing to students, this behavior are being taught to students, are being imitated by students, are being developed among students. For example, punctuality, respect, kindness, honesty, and integrity. For example, if a teacher values or appreciates diversity in class, then students, his or her students, would also be doing that because they are seeing teachers doing such attitude too. Role-playing situations involving affective domain content. For example, paano mo pakita ng kindness, i-roleplay mo, paano ipakita ang compassion, i-roleplay mo and others. Sensitivity training and awareness courses. These are activities under affective domain. Okay. Now we proceed to the evaluation of the domains of learning. When we say evaluation, how to make sure, how to check whether these domains of learning are being developed to our students or not. Please take note that learning within one domain of learning is often interdependent with another domain. Ito yung sabi ko kanina. These domains have to be developed interdependently. Ibig sabihin, okay, pwedeng paisa-isa siya, pero we have to understand na hindi pwedeng yung isang mauna bago yung isa pa. For example, psychomotor skills development requires cognitive knowledge of the parts, concepts, and processes for practice to be most effective. Hindi ibig sabihin na you proceed immediately to psychomotor even without banking into the knowledge level or the cognitive level. Students have to understand the meaning or definition of something else of a concept first before they could doing it, before they could apply such concept or such learning. For example, a student will achieve mastery of playing sepak takraw faster if he can identify the needed equipment, understand the indications for the skill, and recite the sequence of events for completion of the skill before he ever attempts the skill. So this part, okay, identifying needed equipment, understanding the indications of the skill, and recite the sequence, these are all part of the cognitive domain. But these have to be done first by the student before he could be able to achieve mastery of how to play sepak takraw. Okay? Ito yung sasabi natin, the interdependency of the different domains of learning. Some educational learning models encourage an environment where students do high amounts of experimenting as a means to learn. But even in these situations, the students should be guided and mentored by the instructor. These learning situations are most successful with students who possess a high level of self-directedness, ability to easily motivate themselves, who have a passion for learning. That's self-directedness. Okay? Review the course and lesson objectives, determine depth and breadth. Okay, to evaluate whether these domains of learning are being developed to teachers and to students. Try to teach one level deeper than the objective requires because over time, memory degradation will result in the loss of retention of some information. Research shows that the more senses that we ask our learners engage to in the learning process, the more material is retained for a longer period of time. As this passage says, we remember about 10% of what we read, about 20% of what we hear, about 30% of what we see, about 40% of what we see and hear, about 70% of what we can describe and talk about or say, and about 90% of what we can say and do. So this would only tell us that the more senses that we permit our students do or use, okay, the more learning that they could be able to attain or achieve. Okay, Ito lang ang punto nito. Hindi ibig sabihin na hindi ibig sabihin na kailangan 70% lang yung matutunan niya, so dapat mag-describe and talk lang siya. No. But our goal would always be mastery, content mastery or learning mastery. And that would mean as much as possible we allow them to make use, we allow them to utilize their own senses and faculties in doing something or in learning something. Research also shows that the more times material is reviewed and reinforced, the more it is retained in long-term memory. For example, kaya nga later, I'll be asking you to write learning outcomes. I'll be asking you to write learning objectives. At i-check ko yan, babalik ko for you to improve. The more that you would do that, the more that you would learn how to write good learning outcomes, how to write good learning objectives. Objective A states the student should take a supplied list of names of 10 organs and label those organs on a mannequin. That's objective A. Objective B states that the student should draw a human skeleton and label all of the major bonds from memory. Look at this. Objective A deals with a much lower level of cognition. That's knowledge. Why? You would only be asked them to supply the name of the 10 organs and label those organs on mannequin. Madali lang yan. But for objective B, that this is more of synthesis, you should be very thorough on teaching objective B compared to objective A. Why? Because you already have asked them to draw a human skeleton. They draw the human skeleton, means they have to master the human skeleton, and at the same time, they have to label all the major bonds from memory. This is a higher learning than objective A. Ito kasi dati nang may mannequin, i-label lang nila. Pero ito, the-drawing pa nila yung skeleton before they could label the major bonds. Okay, so objective B has to be put focused into than objective A. More examples. A student should be able to take an empty oxygen cylinder and switch the regulator to a full tank. That's the objective. If all of you have ever discussed or demonstrated is how to open the tank and check it for leaks, it is unlikely that your students will be successful in an evaluation of this skill. They can't be able to develop this skill if your focus would only be checking the leaks, in the tank. Another example, a student should be able to lift the 5 chest exercises. It is unlikely that the students will be able to successfully test on this objective unless they are highly motivated and learn it on their own through reading, a study group, or a tutoring session. So aside from listing it, okay, this would not be a good objective. Aside from listing it, you better ask them, you better require them to do their own reading, to develop their own study group, and to do their own tutoring session. Knowledge does not imply competency. Remember that. As I have said a while back in the sharing of Chopin. Cognitive knowledge of a skill does not imply competency in performance of it. Cognitive knowledge must be integrated with psychomotor skills, practice, and performance. Example, a student who can answer multiple choice exam questions about the procedure for lesson planning is not necessarily able to fully write a lesson plan without providing them the opportunities. Kaya kapag mag-practice teaching kayo, you would be asked that every time that you teach, you have to prepare a learning plan. And that preparation, every time, the many times that you would be asked to write or prepare a learning plan would actually develop your ability as a teacher to write a full lesson plan or a learning plan. Now, what are the different evaluation methods for each domain? Okay, ano pwede natin gamitin mga evaluation methods to check whether these domains have been developed to our students? For cognitive, we do written examinations, static presentations, oral examinations. For psychomotor, we can do skill competency exam, scenario-based exam, evaluation in clinical or field setting, on-the-job performance. For affective, we can have class participation, allowing students to be leaders in our class, peer supervision, role modeling, adherence to policies, how they adhere to policies, to classroom routines, Okay, these are one ways to evaluate, okay, the affective domain. Please take note that the Bloom's taxonomy has been revised in 2001. It has been revised in 2001. Now, bakit na-revise siya? Because the old Bloom's taxonomy of objectives, itong kay Kaase, okay, ito yung sa cognitive, no, cognitive development, the cognitive level. Yung sa kay Kaase, they were written in nouns. But when we say learning, it has to be something that students have to be doing, and that is about verbs. So aside from noun form, it has been converted into a verb form. And the person or the educators or the educational theorists who suggested the revised edition is from Anderson. So it was Anderson who revised this Bloom's taxonomy of objectives. It has to be revised to appropriately fit to the 21st century education. Kaya ito objective, ito outcomes. Pero halos parehas lang kasi ang revised edition naman ay base pa rin doon sa Bloom's taxonomy, original taxonomy, kaya nga revised na tawag. Okay? Now, si knowledge tinawag ng remember. Si comprehension tinawag ng understand. Si application tinawag na apply. Analysis, analyze. Napagpalit itong dalawa. Okay? Ang pinakamataas na ngayon ay si create. Because in 21st century, learning is about creation. When we can create something new, when we can construct something new, or we can construct new knowledge or new information that is research and others, then that's the highest form of learning in the 21st century. Now, what do we mean by this? Ito yung ibig sabihin ng 6. Okay? Yung remember po, understand and apply, this fall under the lower order thinking skills. When you do analyze, evaluate, and create, these 3 fall under the HOT or higher order thinking skills. When we say remember, that's merely about recalling facts and basic concepts. Like for example, you ask them to define, to duplicate something, to list, to memorize, to repeat, to state. These are merely objectives or outcomes under remembering. For understanding, we have explain ideas or concepts, classify, describe, discuss, explain, identify, locate, recognize, report, select, translate. Okay, this is under understanding. For applying, it's using information in new situations, execute, implement, solve, use, demonstrate, interpret, operate, schedule, sketch. This is under application. Analyze, we are drawing connections among ideas, differentiate, organize, relate, compare, contrast, distinguish, examine, experiment, question, test. Okay, these are under analyze or analysis. Under evaluation, we are justifying standard decision, appraise, argue, defend, judge, select, support, value, critic, weigh. This is under evaluation. And when we say creation, it's about producing new or original work. Design, assemble, construct, conjecture, develop, formulate, author, investigate. Okay? So these are all under the new, the revised, sabit lang ha. Kung nakapag-ano kayo? Ay, magkano ba? Okay, so this is the revised taxonomy of objectives by Anderson. Now, as we have said, the 3 here, the first 3, okay, is fall under LAT, and this one fall under HAT. These things fall under HAT. Okay? So kapag ang objective mo or learning outcome mo would just merely be remembering, understanding, applying, or just developing the lower order thinking skills. But if your objectives or outcomes, okay, requires analysis, evaluation, creation, that is under HAT. But please remember that all these things have to be considered when we teach. Hindi ibig sabihin na puro HATs ka na lang. But there should also be LATs for them to proceed, okay, for them to progress smoothly, okay, from lower order to higher order thinking skills. Okay, kaya nga sa exam, sa test, hindi pwede na puro hats din. Hindi rin pwede na puro lads. Okay? There should be an equal combination of all these taxonomies. Now, based from the discussion now, as regards Anderson's revised taxonomy, he was able to propose, okay, 4 types of knowledge. Okay, so kanina sabi natin 3 levels lang, no, kanina. The 3 levels, sabi natin knowledge level, application level, problem solving level. But now Anderson is proposing that there are 4 levels of knowledge. Okay? The first level, he said, is factual knowledge. Okay? Ito yung kahalintulad ng knowledge yung tinatawag natin kanina, knowledge level. Then if you could already identify the interrelationships of these facts, then that is conceptual knowledge. If you already know how to apply or how to do something out from these facts, that is procedural knowledge. But if you know that you know, you think that you think, and others, that is already metacognitive knowledge. Okay? Metacognitive knowledge. Okay, for example of a factual knowledge. If you could identify the components of the food pyramid, for example, capital cities of the different places, okay, and you could enumerate the different chess exercises, that is under factual knowledge. Okay? Example of conceptual knowledge. If you could already identify what particular muscle on the chest, okay, is being developed when you do each of these chess exercises, that is conceptual knowledge, because you already know the relationship among these exercises, among these chess exercises. But if you could already do, okay, these chess exercises, then that is procedural knowledge. But if you could already introduce other ways on how to develop the muscles on your chest or any part of your body, that is metacognitive. Kasi nakakabuo ka ng bago. Nakakabuo ka na ng bagong kaalaman in others. That is metacognitive. So these are the 4 levels of knowledge. I have read a certain article, okay, about failures of educational systems or educational institutions in developing understanding or deep understanding among learners. And sometimes sabi nila, yung edukasyon daw, yung mga eskwelahan daw, or even teachers, are not actually developing understanding, but rather developing fragile knowledge. What do you mean by fragile knowledge? The elements of fragile knowledge were proposed by David Perkins, okay, a Harvard learning theorist from Harvard University. And he classified fragile, marupok na pagkatuto, marupok na kaalaman, sabi niya, into 3. The first one is inert knowledge. Allows students to remember information when tested, but does not give them the ability to apply it outside of the classroom. That is inert knowledge. If we only allow our learners to remember information, to memorize information, but we are not teaching them the skill on how to apply it outside the classroom, that is merely an inert knowledge. There's also what we call as naive knowledge. Okay? How should I pronounce that? English majors ba dyan? How should I pronounce that term? Naive ako pronounce ko. Okay? Tama, naive. Okay? Naive knowledge. Knowledge that lets students rely on simple explanations of formulas or to provide the answer, but does not require them to apply knowledge in flexible ways. Okay? Alam mo yung formula, pero hindi mo na alam i-apply kapag mga bagong problems ang ibibigay sa'yo, that is merely a naive knowledge. We also have the ritual knowledge. Substitution of routines that work well in classroom for real knowledge. Students go through the motions expected in school but see no application to the world beyond classroom. So pag di nila makita kung ano yung application ng knowledge na yan beyond classroom, then that is merely ritual knowledge. Okay? That is merely ritual knowledge. Okay? So these are the elements of fragile knowledge according to David Perkins, a Harvard learning theorist. Okay? So that ends our discussion as coverage of the prelim examination. Okay? So, any question before we end our class? It's 11:55. Do you have questions? You might want to add something based from your previous readings as regards the domains of learning, or you might want to clarify something out from the discussion. Benjamin, any question, Benjamin?
Wala po, sir.
Wala. Oh, sure ha, wala. Okay. How about Annabelle? Any question, Annabelle? If you have questions and if you are ashamed of asking it through your voice or through a video, you may make use of the chat box for you to encode your questions or clarificatory questions, or even a supplement statement as regards our discussion today. Again, because Divine Rabara came to class, I think na late siya sa pagpasok. We congratulate Divine for perfecting the second quiz. Well, they have congratulated the others a while back, Jovert and others. Okay. Any question? I only have 8 students in our class now. You might want to ask. Chard, may question ka, Chard? Michael, you might want to ask.
Wala na po, sir.
Wala kang question? O wala ha. Remember, I think there are 90 daw, sorry. There are 20 questions as regards this lesson in the prelim exam. May part doon na you have to match, okay? You have to match the sample activity to the type of knowledge it would develop among students. Okay, may ganung klase na matching type. At okay, explain ko na yung exam, kung paano yung exam. Okay lang ba na-explain ko sa inyo kung paano?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
O, sige, kasi kung di okay, okay naman sa akin.
Sir, wag attitude.
Okay. So, ito yung mga hindi ko papakita, syempre. Okay.
Sir, pakita mo na, sir.
Hindi pwede. So, this is how this is the exam. There's alternative response. Okay. Ang alternative response is you just have to indicate whether the statement describes transformational OBE or traditional OBE.
Okay,
Okay?
sir.
That is 10 items. Okay, sa halimbawa ng tanong, sige maghalimbawa tayo. Instructional outcomes are integrated wholly in school. Transformational or traditional?
Both.
Ha? Ano yon? Traditional or transformational? O sagot.
Traditional yan, sir, eh.
Ha?
Para saan traditional?
Traditional para sa'yo.
Para
Michael.
sa...
Sino ang nag-agree kay Michael na yung instructional outcomes are integrated wholly in school? Sabi ni Michael, traditional. Nag-agree ko ba kayo doon?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Pues, mali yung sagot ninyo. Okay. Integrated wholly. Integrated wholly ang clue word. So that is transformational. Okay?
Ay, okay.
Di mali na kayo kaagad. Okay? Pero nasa inyo na kung yan ang sagot ninyo, ha? Kung paninindigan ninyo na yan ang sagot ninyo, okay lang naman sa akin. Pero mali yan. Okay? Okay, so that's the first test type. Okay. So meron din multiple choice. Okay. May multiple choice din. Okay, for example, of a question, multiple choice. Ito. Okay, halimbawa ito. Which type of educational objective
False.
targets the fostering of values? A. Affective. B.
Effective.
Cognitive. C. Psychomotor. D. Metacognitive. Ano sagot? Robin, saan sagot mo? Ha?
A, sir.
A. Affective. Okay? Hindi ko sabihin kung tama o mali yan. Bahala na kayo. Okay. Okay, another example under multiple choice. Okay, another example under multiple choice.
I-zoom nyo yung eyeglass din, sir.
Which reinforces learning at home or even in school during vacant periods? Games?
Sir?
Which reinforces learning at home or even in school during vacant periods? Games, checklist, anecdotal record, learning contract.
Hala.
Anong sagot?
Sure.
Anong sagot yun?
Learning contract.
Okay, very good. The answer is learning contract. O, kung ibang sagot nyo, okay naman. Okay, kung ibang
Gabi.
okay, so that's another ano. Ay, ito. Yan nyo to. Sabihin ko sa inyo yung ano, yung may 5 points siya. Okay, ito yung tanong dun sa 5 points. Ready
Ano po
kayo.
yan?
Sige, bigay ko yung isang tanong ha. Bahala kayo. Okay.
Sir, pag yan, Q-text mo, ah?
Pero hindi ko sabihin yung mga choices ha. Okay, hindi ko sabihin yung tanong.
Yes,
Para yung dating situation. Okay, this is a situation. Solana District conducts a direct writing assessment every March of the school year. For 4 days, all students at selected grade levels participate in a standardized series of activities to produce their writing samples. Using a carefully scripted manual, teachers guide students through the assessment with limited teacher direction and extended student writing time up to 40 minutes each day. Day 1 is writing the topic introduction and pre-writing. Day 2, rough drafting. Day 3, revising and editing. Day 4, final copying and proofreading. The assessment clearly supports the writing as a process instructional model. Ang tanong ko dyan ay ganito. Which is untrue about this assessment? Ano ang hindi totoo tungkol sa pagtatasang ito? So, ganun ang tanong. So, talagang isipin niyo, may 4 choices. So, isipin niyo kung ano yung hindi totoo doon sa nasabing sitwasyon. Okay? Sige, this is multiple choice. Next, matching type letter A. You are to match the learning activities in column A to its cognitive process in column B. Halimbawa, ano ang cognitive process na made-develop sa mga estudyante if they are to create a weekly budget plan? Create a weekly budget plan. Remembering ba siya? Understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, creating.
Create.
Ha? Ano siya? Create a weekly budget plan. Ano siya?
Creating.
O, bahala kayo. Ito, tandaan ninyo. Hindi porke ginamit ang create, automatic creating na siya, ha? I-check ninyo yung gagawin nila, yung activity. Okay? Klaro ba yun? So, hindi
Okay,
porke
sir.
talaga ay creating na siya automatic. Ang focus niyo, huwag kayo masyado mag-focus din sa verb. You focus on the activity itself, okay? Pag gagawa ko ng budget plan, anong lesson yan kaya? Sa math yan, no? Sa math yan, di ba? O, pag gumawa ko ng budget plan ang gagawin ko. Ano ba dapat siya? Creating ba siya?
Yeah.
May kausap ako. Ano siya? Creating?
Ano yung choices siya?
Create a weekly budget plan. Remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, or creating.
Applying, Chong.
Okay, so start with applying.
Flying, sir.
O, so start with apply. O, tama yan, apply. Okay? What is the lesson in math? Okay. Next, merong matching type B. Okay, matching type B, matching activities in column A, sa category of knowledge in column B. Anong klaseng knowledge ito? If you would ask them to complete the word puzzle, anong knowledge yan?
The word puzzle.
Factual, conceptual, procedural, metacognitive.
Factual.
Okay, good. The answer is factual. Okay?
Alas na parang,
So,
parang, yeah. Wala.
yeah. Okay, any other questions? So, those are the types of questions in your prelim exam. Okay?
Good na
So,
ito, 5 points.
Ang makakakuha, the 85 item, no? Ang makakakuha ng
50, Char.
80.
Wala 80. Wala nang midterm exam.
Hindi, bawal yun. Okay. Ang makakuha ng 80, sige, baba natin, gawin natin 75. Okay. Ang makakuha ng 75 over 85 sa prelim exam will be exempted from the first week for midterm.
Ay, gusto ko yan.
Okay?
Pero,
automatic.
hindi na ako
Kapag 75 ang exam mo, ang 75 ang score mo, automatic perfect mo ang first week sa midterm. You don't need
So,
to take
mag-quiz tayo. Mag-quiz tayo.
Malamang meron. You may take the quiz, pero automatic ang score mo ay perfect.
Isang quiz.
Magkakama mo sarili mo review. Ha, Michael?
Wala ko lahat ng quiz na.
Hindi, ano lahat ng quiz? Okay. So any other question? No more? Okay, if there are no other questions because it's already 12:06, maybe request Jobins to lead us the closing prayer.
Latitude. Sure. In the name of the Father, of the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for making this virtual meeting possible. Thank you for the presence of our dear teacher, Sir Herbert, and thank you for giving us the strength, knowledge to assimilate all the learnings today. May we all guide. May you all guide us today. Amen. Amen. Father.
Amen.
Okay, Vlad, I'll upload the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation in our LMS, so for you to be able to download it and review it. Okay?
Okay,
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, wala bang
Yes, sir.
module? Puro video?
May module na ako pinost.
Ay, sige po, sir.
Kapopost ko kanina. Jovis, nakita mo, di ba active ka kanina nung nagpo-post ako? Oh, pati si David, si Richard din nakita niya na nag-post na ako. Okay, so I already have posted it in our LMS, and I'll upload the presentation so you can make use of it to review your lesson. Okay? Thank you and prepare well for the exam.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.